Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a pretty provocative interpretation of one of the most foundational teachings in the Bible. It's one of those ideas that takes something you think you know and, well, it flips it on its head. So let's get right into it.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning with a question pretty much everyone has heard before. The text we're digging into today sets up this classic scene from the Bible when Jesus was put on the spot and asked to name the single greatest commandment of all. What was his answer?
And boom, there it is, the answer. Love God with everything you've got and love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. He says, look, everything, absolutely everything in the scriptures boils down to these two simple ideas. This is our baseline, the common ground for everything that's about to follow.
Okay, but right here is where this whole interpretation takes a really sharp turn. It throws a tough question at us. Is it enough to just say it? Is just saying the words, I love God, I love my neighbor, the same thing as actually doing it? And the core argument from the source material we're looking at is, well, it's that words are cheap. They're not the real measure. The true test of your love, of your faith, isn't what comes out of your mouth. It's what you actually do.
So you might be asking, all right, where are they getting this from? Well, the source immediately points to scripture to back this up, starting right here. The logic is presented as being super direct. Love isn't some abstract feeling, it's proven by your actions, specifically by keeping the commandments.
And then, bam, it hits you with this one, probably one of the most famous lines from the book of James. The idea is simple. If your faith doesn't lead to you actually doing something, it's dead. It has no life in it. These two verses right here, they're basically the entire foundation for this whole argument. Okay, and this is where it gets really uncomfortable. The source uses this incredibly strong language, claiming that if someone's actions don't actually line up with the commandments, they could be seen as workers of iniquity, even if they say they have faith, which, of course, leads to the million-dollar question, what kind of actions are we even talking about here?
And that question takes us right into the modern world. This is where the source takes that whole words versus works idea and applies it directly to something we all know, the modern welfare state. And it gives it a very particular name. And that name is legal charity. So what is that? According to the source, it's basically any social safety net, think benefits, welfare programs, that's paid for through government force, like taxes, instead of being given freely and voluntarily by individuals. And let me tell you, getting this distinction is absolutely key to understanding the rest of this critique.
Yeah, just look at this comparison. It really draws a line in the sand, doesn't it? On one side, you've got what the source calls true charity. It's voluntary, it comes from faith and hope. But on the other side, it labels legal charity as forced, something based on authority. And here's the real bombshell. It calls it a form of coveting your neighbor's goods. And believe it or not, the critique gets even more intense. I mean, look at this. The text calls state benefits things like the wages of unrighteousness and the free bread of Caesar. The argument being made here is that these systems don't actually help in the long run. They create dependency and saddle future generations with debt, effectively cursing them. It is a really, really harsh critique.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, whoa, hold on a second. How do we get from social safety nets to idolatry? That feels like a massive leap, right? Well, according to the source, there's a very clear step-by-step logic that it follows to get there. So let's just walk through this logic path. Step 1. The source claims that when you get government benefits, you are essentially using the government's power to take from your neighbors. Step 2. It defines that specific action as coveting. And step 3, it points out that the Bible itself, in no uncertain terms, explicitly calls coveting a form of idolatry. And here it is, the scriptural proof used to seal the deal. The source points right to verses like this one from Colossians to connect all the dots. I mean, it doesn't get much more direct than that. Covetousness, which is idolatry. So, if you follow that logic all the way through, the source's final conclusion is that relying on legal charity is, by its own definition, a form of idolatry. All right, so if the modern system is the problem, what's the solution? The source we're looking at isn't just about tearing things down. It actually proposes an alternative, what it believes is the true biblical model for how to take care of one another. And that solution is to go back to the basics, to go back to the model of the early Christian church. And what did they do? Well, they cared for their own community members directly through personal, voluntary charity.
No government middlemen, no forced collection. Just people helping people.
And this practice has a name too, daily ministration. And you can see how it's framed as the polar opposite of legal charity. It's not some big centralized impersonal system. It's a decentralized, voluntary network of people looking out for their own, based on real relationships and shared faith.
And this slide really puts it all side by side. It's the final showdown, if you will. According to this view, many modern Christians have effectively outsourced their responsibility, their daily ministration, to the state. The source even compares it to this old biblical concept called korban, which was basically a religious loophole to get out of helping your own family. So the argument is, the state has become a modern korban. And this is all contrasted with the early Christian model, which the source says was built on real faith and love, the very system they were commanded to follow.
Okay, so let's start to pull all these threads together. As we wrap this up, you can see how the source material has taken us on a pretty wild ride, from a simple, well-known commandment all the way to a full-blown critique of modern society and faith.
When you boil it all down to its absolute essence, the core argument is this: that an authentic faith, a true love for God and neighbor, can't just be something you say. It has to be something you do. It must be a work of the hands, expressed through direct, voluntary acts of charity and service.
And so, this interpretation doesn't just end with a statement. It ends with a challenge, framed by one of the most famous metaphors in the Bible. It's asking us, directly, are we building our own foundation on the solid rock of actually doing the work? Or are we building on the shifting sand of simply hearing the words?